while we wait, well, actually, the hour has struck. So I'm going to ask for volunteers to take notes. If anyone in the room can help us take notes, that would be greatly appreciated. I think I can see Yaron in the room.
So I can do that.
Might I? Are you volunteering with that raised hand? That would be great. Thank you, Yaron. All right, so Yaron
Hi,
will.
Prachi and Leif. Sorry, I'm late.
That's
Roman
all
speaking.
good.
Hey, Roman.
Yeah, that's all good. Thank you, Roman. So we have we're winding up. We're starting up here. So we do have a Yaron volunteering to take notes from the floor. So I think we're good to go. So
Thank
this
you,
is this is Tigress for many reasons. Neither me nor my co-chair could be in Yokohama this week, so we're doing one of these all remote chairing things, and that you know, given due to the excellent quality of the IETF toolchain, this usually works out very well. So you know, we'll see. But we have Roman up in our AD up in the one of our security ADs up in the room up front to just keep an eye on things. So
No, I'm just keeping your seat warm. You're gonna have the same seat in San Francisco. We just pass it along.
That's excellent. Thank you, Roman. All right. So let's start. Let's see here. All right, let's start with your usual note the note well. Presumably you've all been to an IETF meeting before, but if you haven't, take a minute to review the rules governing IETF meetings. There's a list of BCPs and the privacy policy. Take a look at those. So I can already see that people in the room are using their mask. It's very good. Keep them on unless you're speaking. You can usually speak with your mask on as well, but you know, you're free to take it off if you're up at the microphone. Please use the queue tool to get yourself in queue, even though you physically can stand up and go to the mic. Just go use the on-site queue tool to get on the queue. So yeah, your chairs know that you want to speak, and we're going to manage the queue sort of using the electronic queue, not using people's physical presence at the mic. And if you're on the queue remotely, please do use a headset, or you know, do whatever you need to do to avoid those irritating feedback loops. All right. Here's our agenda. Today we're basically doing an update from the writing team, and so we're going to launch into that in a second. And we have a Jabber channel that's connected into the Meet Echo. So feel free to kind of raise your hand or raise issues there if you can, but it always helps to keep the discussion going if you stand up to the mic. All right, so we're going to talk about two documents today: the threat model, the newly issued threat model draft, and the requirements document. And then you know, we're going to start talking about the issue of working group adoption later in the meeting. So with that, I'm going to see who is going to talk about the threat model draft. Casey, is that you? Oh,
at least locally, we're having
gonna...
trouble with the audio from Casey.
Oh,
sorry. Can you hear me now?
Oh. Yes. Perfect.
Okay, great.
I'm going to switch over
I don't know.
to
the slide deck.
Yeah.
Great.
There we are. So you can request control now.
Okay.
Whomever is going to run the deck. Dimitri, are you going to run the deck?
Hopefully everything's working. Sorry, my setup is not working very well right now. So this is Tigress, our meeting for IETF116. So we are going to get started and move on. Okay, so we are just the main agenda here is just to review our updates since the last interim meeting that we had about a month ago, and then talk through our next steps. So firstly, I'll talk through some updates to the requirements, and I'll pass it on to Dimitri to finish up. To note, for the threat model, we didn't get much feedback on the threat model, so it has remained basically the same since our last interim meeting, and we really focused on, the feedback we got from requirements. So first of all, we clarified and updated the document for consistency, so made the introduction more generic and updated some of the sequence diagrams and generally made it more readable. We also removed the requirement for person-to-person only sharing. In the last meeting, we got some feedback on that particular requirement because it is more on the credential authority or whoever is dealing with redeeming the share for making sure that it's a one-to-one mapping of whatever information is shared rather than this transfer protocol. So we agreed to that and took it out. And we've also removed the sender and receiver trust of the intermediary server and moved it into a security and privacy considerations section instead. Similarly, we removed the non-collection requirement, which is also covered in that security and privacy considerations. We also removed the speed requirement and moved to general consideration. So this one is in general considerations because it's more about implementer being considerate of the battery power and network performance for those devices rather than a strict requirement. And lastly, we removed that single redemption requirement and again moved it into security and privacy considerations. So with that, I'll pass it on to Dimitri.
All right, Dimitri, feel free to step up to the queue, and I'll give you
Yeah, I'll give him another minute, and if he isn't able to start, then I can go through these updates as well.
Yeah. Well, why don't you start? Well, no, here he comes. Let's see here.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dimitri.
Sorry, looks like I had problems with my headset. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Casey. Basically, Casey just covered everything. So in the last interim meeting, we had some feedback and we incorporated the changes into the new requirements version. So we removed some of the items. Some of the items have been moved to security and general considerations, and 2 new requirements were added. So the number of retrievals, we want to limit that. And basically the reason for that, since we removed one-to-one requirement, so transfer from single device to another single device, we want to introduce a limitation on the number of such transfers. And the second requirement is connection integrity. And this is mostly covers the use case when we pass, let's say, digital car key. And the transfer process actually is an exchange between sender and receiver device. which includes key signing request and key impact request being exchanged between these two. We don't want a third device to intervene into the exchange and spoil the data. Basically, this is all there is. And I think I've covered most of the changes to the requirements doc. Thank you, Casey.
So these, I see Eric is joining the queue. Yeah.
People can bear with me for a second while I find this button, or we can just stipulate that I've done it. There it is. I'll just start talking and then we'll wait for the button to show up. So I don't think I understand this first requirement, and I'm not sure how you'd enforce it.
Right.
I mean, so like, as I understand the situation, the base thing we've been talking about, we assume there's some secret value which is passed from the sender to the receiver, and so is the point that the receiver would the receiver would then hand. So in order for there to be multiple participant devices, the receiver had to send that secret value to another receiver, right?
Yeah, so the idea, if you remember, Eric, previously in the interim meeting, we discussed that we wanted to remove the limitation of transferring from single device to another single device, right? But we still wanted to introduce some kind of limitations because we cannot transfer to unlimited number of recipients. It's
sure, but I think this goes to the layering of the system again, right? Which, as I understand it, is that the receiver device then goes and talks to, the provisioning partner, I guess, to retrieve the keying material, right? And so the provisioning partner. So the provisioning partner is in a position to limit the number of participants, but it's not clear to me how anything in this system is in a position to limit that number. So we have the sender, the receiver, and I guess the relay. What would any of them do to limit the number of participants that could be in the system?
Right. I think
as I understood this requirement as it was going in, the idea was not that the system would limit any the numbers of participants, but the sender could specify a limit that it wanted the provisioning partner to adhere to.
Right. So that seems reasonable. I guess maybe it seems like there's a more generalized version of this, which is the sender gets to attach some stuff they can send a provisioning partner unmodified, because maybe the other policies the sender would wish to tell the provisioning partner as well. I mean, I guess I just sort of assumed. I just sort of assumed that what was going to happen here is that the sender was going to send some stuff through whatever this magic machinery we're building is to the participant, the receiver. The receiver would then send that to the provisioning partner, which would do some things and send some stuff back, right? And so it's like, I assume that there's got to be some opaque blob that can send to the provisioning partner, and that could presumably include anything, including the number of participant devices. But it probably also includes like a time, like a duration, or whatever, right? Maybe an access control list. So I guess I just don't understand. I'm just trying to figure out the layering is here, because it seems like that this just seems like it's kind of a very concrete requirement, but that more generally there's like the system has to include some blob that can send to the provisioning partner, doesn't it? Am I just confused? Maybe I am.
Eric, I think the confusion is we are not trying to cover the provisioning part here. It's the protocol. So we wanted to introduce some kind of limitation in the protocol. Let's say we initiated transfer, and we wanted to say, I'm sending these credential to 1, 2, 3 users only, like on a transfer level, on a protocol level.
Sure. But my point is that's enforced by the provisioning partner, not by this protocol, right?
in case there is a provisioning partner.
But if there's not, I don't see how this protocol enforces that.
Um,
That's what I'm getting at.
well, technically, it can be done in various ways. I'm just like thinking it
Sure.
out.
But yeah, spitball.
By locking the resource on the intermediate server, etc.
By doing what?
By locking the resource. So we create a mailbox and we lock it to, let's say, 1, 2, or 3 users.
Well, no, but I guess as I understood it, the receiver is not authenticating the server at all. So the only thing that distinguishes receiver from one another is the secret material you just pass to it, and we assume that the receivers are colluding because otherwise you wouldn't have the secret link anyway. So I think you need more. I think, guys, if you think that, I guess, like, maybe this is a sensible requirement, but I guess I'm trying to understand what protocol machinery would do this, and I think that probably needs like some fleshing out. And if we can't design a protocol machinery, then it shouldn't be a requirement. So I'm not saying that they're a final piece of protocol machinery, but there better be at least one that we have in mind, right?
Okay.
So I'll go in the queue as an individual. And Eric, isn't isn't this basically what Privacy Pass does? I mean, they in Privacy Pass you can limit the number of times you can dereference a token, essentially, right?
Well, yes. So I think certainly what you could do. So certainly you could I think.
You could tokenize something like Privacy Pass, right? That's my point.
I mean, it's like, you could certainly say like only one round trip is available, right, to you, but it's not the same as saying only one device is available, right?
Right. I mean, it's a.
Let me give you a concrete example. You send to, let's say you said, for instance, that once the so it means like this is like going back and forth to the relay. But say there's only one round trip for the relay just for convenience, right? And so you said, well, once the receiver has sent a message, then it can't send another message ever, and that's like it, right? The receiver loses the state and tries to retransmit, and it's like host, right? And so like my point is that's overachieving on this requirement, right? Not underachieving, right? And so the problem is trying to distinguish between multiple participants and multiple flows from the same participant. It's not always obvious. Anyway, like I think we probably talked about this too long. I guess what I would suggest is maybe someone could write down like a paragraph or two with a diagram showing how one might do this, and then once we understand that, we'll know what this means. And if you struggle with that later, then maybe this is not a good requirement. Like I understand technically why you want to build a system that had this property. I'm just trying to make sure that what makes sense of this layer.
Yeah, your comment is basically that we make sure that the requirements are actually feasible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think that this the second one I think makes sense. This is just saying like you have to use like TLS or something like it between the sender and the and the relay.
Yeah, that's exactly not to spoil the data exchange.
Yeah, right. So I guess yes, that seems fine. I guess the reason I'm sort of like making some funny noises here is because you could design the system in a way that you had like end-to-end protection of this data, but not like transport level protection, and you wouldn't have any retries or something, and then you might have, and so interfere could actually be like denial of service versus like tampering, right? And so like I just want to make sure like you're trying to like define like is this guaranteed delivery or is it just guaranteed non-detectable interference, right?
Yeah.
All right, Yogesh. Yogesh, I think you need to turn on. Maybe you're trying to speak. I don't know, but
yeah, he's having some technical trouble right now.
All right, we'll keep you on the queue for now. Why don't, or maybe. All right, we'll see. Does anybody else have any comments here about the requirements draft? Why do we wait for Yogesh to do battle with audio?
Oh. Is it my turn? Sorry, I just joined.
Well, now we can hear you.
Okay, sorry, it took a while to register, I guess. So, Eric, I did hear some of your questions. Can you please repeat? Sorry, I joined late. I wasn't registered in time.
So Eric had a question to that newly introduced requirement retrievals. So the sender should be able to specify the max number of participant devices. And probably since you're the author of this requirement, you'd be able to better explain it.
Yeah, I'll be glad to explain. Is it possible to know what the question was? Sorry that I joined late.
Sure, I can try again. But I think, I'm worried we're kind of burning up a lot of time in this meeting. So maybe better if I send an email at this point.
Oh no, I mean we can
Whatever
take
you
5
want,
more minutes. We're fine.
Okay. So my question is, like, where would this machinery, like, where would this enforcement happen? So, like, I understand a version where the provisioning partner only allows one key to be issued, but how would you envision this protocol specifying that the two participant devices don't participate, right? So by assumption, the two participant devices are colluding, and so how do you stop them from both participating in the exchange?
Retrieval requirement, right? Why does it matter what the protocol does? Because we are designing a transport.
But my point, I understand that. What I'm saying is that in the transport, when you have two participants and they're colluding, how do you stop them from being two participant devices?
So we are not trying to prevent collusion, right? This is similar to, say, IP transport. The job of IP transport is to transfer a packet from one IP address to other, right? So
this says senders should be able to specify the max number of participant devices that can participate in the credential transfer.
Right. So in case of IP, the number is 1. In this case, it could be.
That's not true. That's not true, though. That's not true. That's not true.
Why is it not true?
Because if you have two adjacent devices on the same network, they can both participate as long as they cooperate. And sometimes even if they don't cooperate.
So what they do after they receive the packet is their prerogative, right? That's not the transport prerogative. What we are trying to say here is that, so I can use maybe a simpler example. This is to me, say if we are designing a cookie jar to share cookies between two people, right? And if I put one cookie in there and I tell the jar that only allow one person to pick it up, that's essentially what this requirement is. What the person does with the cookie after they retrieve, that's up to them.
Okay, but that's not what this text says.
That is what it says, right? The sender should be able to specify the max number of participant devices that can participate in the transfer.
Can I step in here, because I actually think that the intention here is to talk about sort of administrative control, but Eric is talking about collusion, right? And the text is a little bit ambiguous in my mind.
I agree to the ambiguity. I see it now. I see when you mention the ambiguity, yes. But the idea is not to control the collusion after the fact. It is just to the point of that we deliver a number of packages to n unique individuals. Maybe we should have worded it a little bit differently. I agree to that.
But I actually want to resist the example you just gave. So as I understood the design you just described, the sender sends the message, it gets dropped off in the mailbox, and then you allow retrieval exactly once, right? But now you have the two generals problem. And so if there's any kind of glitch on the receiver's version, the receiver can't retrieve it, and the whole thing fails. So it actually doesn't even work.
Why would it fail on the? So what kind of
So
glitch are we talking?
the relay enforces one retrieval. The receiver asks for the message. The relay sends the message along, and deprecates the counter so it can't send again, and then the receiver crashes.
So we
It's
are
like a
getting
perfectly
into
common situation.
right? 1 second. We haven't designed the protocol yet, right? This is the requirement. We can design
Right,
it.
and no, but when I'm challenging you to.
Once at a
I'm
time.
challenging you to.
One person at a time, please.
Sure. What I'm challenging you to do is describe to me an implementation of this requirement, because I'm skeptical it can be achieved.
I mean, as far as I understand, we are supposed to come up with requirements, and then the working group is supposed to design the solution, right?
Well, yes,
Okay,
but the point, hang on. The point, which is, that, I mean, Eric does have a point there, that it doesn't make sense to put in requirements that we don't have at least some idea that we could actually implement, right? Now, I made the point before you arrived, Yogesh, that it is possible to design schemes like this using things like, but it's kind of similar to what privacy pass does, where you can limit the number of times you can dereference a token or consume a token. They typically build on these digital cache schemes. So it is possible to do, but the question is that the intent of the text? Clearly, the text needs to be clarified to clearly describe what the intent is. Maybe the intent is simply what you said, Yogesh. It's just about sort of setting a counter on the packet, basically, right? And it assumes that there's no collusion in place. If that is the case, it should clearly say so.
I agree that we need to clarify it better. That part I definitely agree.
Well, so why don't you post some new text and then I'll take a look.
I think I missed the last part, but
Yogesh, did you want to say anything else about this, or before we let Daniel come to the front?
So
yeah,
I just wanted to try to clarify, I think, the problem that Ecker was pointing at here, which is you have two options when you're designing a system like this, regardless of what the implementation is. One option is that you really only want another device to be able to pick it up, one other device to be able to pick it up at most. And if you do that, then that other device, when it fails, this transfer is done. They have to go back and request another thing. You're not giving them a second crack at it. And if you put in this requirement, what you're saying is, we want the system to fail if the recipient device fails. And that might be fine, but it's just worth thinking about, is that what we want? Does that trade-off make sense?
it does, yes. And in some cases, you may want some retry mechanism built in, and in some cases not. But that's definitely something we can consider.
Dimitri, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that we definitely need to clarify the requirement, and we can do that over the mailing list.
Yeah, and I heard Eric very nicely offered to send some text. That's greatly appreciated. Yeah. So, kind of pausing to see if somebody else wants to get on the queue on the requirements before we switch over to talk about the threat model document. Now, who is going to talk about that?
Brad, if Brad is on, Brad can talk about it.
Brad, yes.
Yeah, sure. So I think the threat model we touched on earlier when Casey was mentioning that there was no changes in that based on from the feedback on the interim. So that document has stayed stable for the last several weeks. However, if anyone has any comments on the text that's posted, that'd be great discussion to have.
Brad, maybe for those who weren't at the interim, it could be maybe you do a quick kind of intro to where it comes from and what the purpose of the document is. Since this is the first regular IETF meeting, we kind of had it.
Sure, certainly. So the threat model starts off with effectively pulling the privacy and security goals out of the charter of Tigress, and restating them as goals for the threat model, and then runs through the assets and data that we are considering, and the users, and then for attackers and motivations, we try to outline all of the threats that are facing the overall transaction, intentionally covering threats that will not be mitigated by the protocol itself and might be mitigated at other levels, but looking to document them just the same. We don't have slides that go over all the different threats. Was that something you were looking at, Dooley? Anyway, there's it's not that long of a document in terms of threats and mitigations. There's two basic groups. First are threats to the entire transaction, and this includes a transaction that doesn't involve an intermediary server. The other category is threats directly to the intermediary server, such as an attacker intercepting the encryption key or guessing the unguessable location, as was described in the proposed implementation. Yeah, you're muted. Leave.
But I just posted the link to the threat model document in the chat for anyone who's interested.
I want to do a quick show of hands for threat model document, who have read it.
Do you see people? We're using the tool. Oh, we're using the tool? Pretend I clicked up.
People must have had a lot of time on their flights over to Japan.
Yeah, well, it's I mean, it's a good, it's a reasonable showing for the size of the group. So still getting some. So this is indicative for the chairs to figure out where we can expect to get some reviews. So I want to solicit for some volunteers to review the threat model document and respond on the list. If we can get some volunteers on that from, then you can just sort of drop a note in the chat or step up to the mic. Oh, excellent, Eric. It would be, I mean, if anybody has comments, obviously, right, step up to the mic and oh, perfect. Thank you, Eric. All right. So Eric is volunteering to send some review notes to the list. That's excellent. And one or two more would be greatly appreciated. But all right. I think we'll leave it at that. So and we have one. I had one on somebody on the queue. Was that somebody volunteering? And Daniel, thank you. Thank you, DKG, for that volunteering to review. Perfect. All right, we did briefly have somebody stepping up to the queue, but they disappeared. So I'm put that down as that's a mistake. All right. Now that was kind of the bulk of our agenda. Now we're down to last half of the meeting, and obviously we're going to do any other business and open mic, but I also want to talk a little bit about sort of the status of the documents as working group documents. Now we've started out with quite a bit of review on the documents. They've been rearranged quite a bit. They've been sort of taken apart a little bit, and they don't have the structure they went in with now. But they have seen quite a bit of review, and what me and Prachi are planning to do is after IETF and after the if we get a quick round of revisions maybe, but otherwise we plan to issue a call for adoption for the requirements documents. And the threat model document needs a little bit more review before we can sort of talk about that. But the as a working group document, but certainly the requirements document is kind of starting to feel like it's gotten quite a fair bit of review. Now, what I would like to solicit at this point is comments. I mean, we're not doing an adoption call today. We're going to do it on the list. Because, well, clearly there isn't enough people in the room today to kind of represent consensus, but we're going to do that call on the list. But I want us to get a sense from those present about what do you think the status is, right? Are we ready to start talking about adoption? I saw Eric's comment on the chat. Anyone else step up to the mic? Or
I'll just say this in person. I think adoption would be appropriate at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Anyone else? Any reaction? Otherwise, we can just sort of take that on the list. And again, thanks everyone for all of the due diligence reviewing these documents. It's been yeoman's work. Thank you very much. All right.
All right.
I'm not seeing
thank you.
anybody run to the list. I'm sure it's because it's like a lot of people are remote this time, and it's like a really bad time of the day for US participants. That's the way it is. Prachi, do you want to add anything here?
No, I think we are good. We'll take it to the mailing list. I think adoption is the next step. Yep.
Yep. All right. That kind of brings us to the end of the agenda. So we have open mic. If anybody wants to raise any issues, this is your time to run for the mics. And not seeing anyone. We can end a few minutes early. I think the next step is afternoon break for those in Japan, right?
So we'll give them some time back.
Yeah, and we'll see you all at the next IETF in San Francisco, hopefully. All right.
All right.
Thank you,
Bye,
everyone. Yaron, hopefully you took the notes in the note-taking tool. Thank you very much for that, and thanks all for participating. Bye-bye.
Oh, no, I just sorry. No, I see. Welcome to the So maybe, yeah, it will take